So folks, I get to talk to you about something pretty amazing. How to change the world, right? That's why you're here. That's what Resistance School is all about. And I come at this with a little bit of my own expertise and experience. I'm going to talk to you about building power to win on our issues, but I know Marshall would get mad at me if I didn't start with my story of self, my story of us, story of now. So that's where I'm going to begin, something you learned in session 1. So what was shared in my bio is true. I had the great honor of representing my home district in the state senate in Colorado, and that district is just north of Denver. It's a place that has an oil refinery, a coal-fired power plant, 5 landfills, and the wastewater treatment plant. And I grew up right in the middle. You know that saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure? I am trailer treasure. I was that kid with the ducktail and a chihuahua named Tina Turner in the 80s. That was me. And I grew up in a community that showed me love, but also that was daily living the impacts of poor public policy, bad health impacts, lack of access to good jobs and good opportunities, and not surprisingly, I was one of the few who made it out of that community to become the first person in my family to get a 4-year degree and go into college. So for me, coming into this work was actually a living manifestation of the daily realities of what was happening in my community. And so I went, first person in my family to get a 4-year degree. I go into college my first year, and the state legislature decided to double tuition at our public universities to balance the budget. I was paying my way. And I started meeting other students who were in a similar situation who said, this seems unfair, this seems unjust. Someone should do something about it. And looked around, absent-minded. Someone should do something about it. Looked around, absent-minded. Someone should do something about it. And then we kind of looked at each other and said, I think that's us. And so we went to the state capitol when I was 18 and lobbied against the doubling of tuition at our public universities and won. In my first year, as an 18-year-old, kept my tuition the way it was, and I got to stay in college and keep the hopes and dreams of my family and my community still on my shoulders, and persisted. So by the time I was 19, I was the designated lobbyist for our student government down in the Capitol every single day, fighting for access to higher education for low-income students, for students of color, for immigrants and refugees. That changed my life. It showed me that we have power when we show up and we use our voice, and when we know where power resides. And so that's what I get to talk to you about. It feels a little funny to be here on Harvard's campus. I'm going to be challenging one of its most famous alumni, Elle Woods. Like it's hard or something, right? Changing the world, like it's hard or something? It's not hard to change the world. In fact, it is one of the easiest things to do when we know what we're doing. So tonight, we're going to be talking about a theory of change, and that's specifically how do you go about enacting the community change that you seek. And this is pretty simple and straightforward, but we actually have to start with a hypothesis about the kind of change we seek, and we have to figure out how to make that happen. How do we take our most radical imagination, the thing that we want the world to be, how do we turn that into reality? And I say that as a kid from a trailer park who just 2 weeks ago was on stage with Senator Elizabeth Warren, your senator here in Massachusetts, talking about the future of the Democratic Party. And the night before that, I had dinner with Vice President Mondale. Our most radical dreams can become realities. Changing power in our communities can become reality if we do the hard work. When I was elected to the state senate, side by side with a group of progressive colleagues and people who had been organizing in our communities for years, everything that we had been fighting for over a decade became law. The first time I did a grassroots policy visit and actually testified in committee in our state legislature, it was on the In-State DREAM Act. So undocumented students who had resided in Colorado couldn't go to our public universities and not be treated as international students. I testified, I was so excited, I was 19 at the time, and I wanted to see this bill pass. I was a citizen. I testified without consequence. All of the undocumented folks who testified on that bill were reported to Immigration and Customs Enforcement in that hearing by the committee chairman. I saw that happen, and it pissed me off. And my community said, this is not the way our democracy should work, we should change things. So every single year, we fought on this bill to get access to higher education for undocumented students. And the year I was elected to the Colorado State Senate, I got to chair the full Senate as we passed that into law. You might not know this. A lot of people don't know the history of what happened in Colorado due to our deep organizing efforts and progressive work. But that year, my first year in the state legislature, we passed in-state tuition for undocumented residents, driver's licenses for undocumented residents, the state earned income tax credit, the Colorado child tax credit, the largest renewable energy standard in the country, We passed civil unions, comprehensive gun background checks, and a whole other host of gun safety measures. We also expanded labor protections and making sure that folks weren't discriminated at work and access to free birth control. Also, marijuana became legal. Usually people end on that note, or they hear that in the news. We also closed 6 prisons, 4 of them private, and started to tackle mass incarceration. We did that in less than 120 days, my first year in the legislature. It's not hard. It is not hard. I'm 34 years old. I stand here as a testament to say it is not hard. But it does take work. You have to focus your energies. And you have to figure out, what is the change that I seek? What is the world that I want to live in? And then how do I get there?